Hi, I'm Dr. Allie Sharma, a psychiatrist and mental health advocate. Over the past year, I've been working on a podcast with Bridget, which was due to launch in March. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I have pivoted to create a Coping with COVID-19 interview series. A few guests from our yet-to-be-released podcast who have COVID-19 stories to share will be featured here on Coping with COVID-19 by Dr. Allie. Today, I'm excited to share Mia Kang's story with you. Please note that the contents of Coping with COVID-19 are for informational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your mental health professional or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding your condition. Never disregard professional advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on Coping with COVID-19. Mia Kang is a fashion model who is half South Korean, half British, and was born in Hong Kong, and is a strong advocate for diversity and body positivity, which is no surprise given her background. Mia has struggled with an eating disorder for years. It was not until recently, through her discovery of the martial art Muay Thai, that she regained balance over her mind, body, and behaviors around eating. What you may not know is that in the past 2 weeks, Mia developed acute respiratory symptoms while in Thailand and was in isolation for suspected COVID-19 infection. She is now at home under quarantine as she recovers and has an important perspective both on the psychological side of living with COVID-19 or the potential of COVID-19, how isolation can trigger pre-existing mental health issues like an eating disorder, and how her normal coping mechanisms are not possible during this time. I have utter respect for Mia to take the time to open up with us about this because these struggles are universal and global. The following are clips taken from our interview on March 22nd, 2020. We hope you enjoy this sneak preview of Model Mentality and our interview with Mia Kang. Tell us what happened 8 days ago that led you, to get the test for COVID-19.
So 9 days ago, I'd had a little bit of a cough, and I immediately went to the doctors, and I had a cough and shortness of breath. It was really the shortness of breath that was worrying me. And I wasn't running a fever, and I know, and also I want people to understand that this is a very unpredictable disease. The symptoms are not textbook, and they're not the same for everybody. And so I had 2 symptoms, and I went to the doctor immediately, and I was diagnosed with bronchitis. They didn't do a COVID test, but he did an X-ray, and he examined me, and he said he thinks that it's bacterial and not viral, and he thinks that it's bronchitis. Gave me 5 days of antibiotics. If it doesn't clear up or if anything gets worse, absolutely come back. The next day, which was 8 days ago, I was walking on the street. It was hot, and my shortness of breath got so bad that I started hyperventilating, and I got, numbness in my extremities, and I collapsed, and I was ambulanced to the hospital, where they then decided, you know what, we think you're fine, but out of safe measure, we're going to do the test because you qualify for the test. We're going to do it just so that we can rule it out. I then spent 2 days in isolation and in hospital, and I didn't get my results back. I was feeling fine. I wasn't requiring any medical assistance. I didn't need a ventilator. I didn't need any IV. I was just alone in a room. So I said to the hospital that I want to sign a waiver, and I want to go and do self-isolation at home so that somebody who is critical can take my hospital bed because I don't need it. Ultimately, I don't really need it. I just need the isolation. So I went home, and since then I have been self-isolating, and I have not gotten my test results back. And I think that just goes to show how overwhelmed the medical systems are globally.
So when you were in the hospital, right, especially those 2 days of isolation, tell us a little bit about your stress levels, your thoughts, your emotions.
Day 2 was horrific. Day 2, I started going crazy. I really wanted the results. They told me 24 hours, potentially up to 72. My anxiety levels got higher. I then, started spiraling about the craziest thing. I started spiraling about, what if I don't have it, but I catch it in here? Like I started thinking, because I was in a ward of isolation rooms. So I was like, what if the people in the room next to me and I don't know, cross-contamination, or what if I get it? I really started spiraling. And I'm sure everybody is spiraling about this virus because of its infectiousness and because of, its characteristics. But I actually think it was 2 nights, 3 days. It was the end of the third day that I realized I'm not getting my results anytime soon. I spoke with the doctor and she said, labs are overwhelmed. And we would have normally gotten your results right now, but right now labs are overwhelmed. And I kind of realized that I'm not going to get them back in the next couple of hours. So I need to be a responsible human being, and somebody else deserves this bed more than I do. And I'm going to step out. They put me on antivirals. So I was on the antibiotics and antivirals at the same time, which is great. I think that they should just start medication, not waiting days and days for test results. I think they should just start treating if the treatments are non-toxic. And I feel great. I don't know what happened. I don't know if I've had it or not, but I feel much better. I have like slight reminiscence of a cough. I never ran a fever. I did feel very tired all the time and I had shortness of breath, but I am feeling much better now. And then now in isolation, it's like, I spend 4 hours of my day thinking I have coronavirus. Then I spend 8 hours of the day having anxiety and thinking that the anxiety is coronavirus.
How is this period, this pandemic, how has it been affecting your eating disorder? And second, what would you like to tell others that may be getting triggered?
For me, I've noticed myself being extremely triggered and feeling a sense of helplessness because you're confined to a limited space. Your routine is completely thrown out of whack. I cannot eat the fresh vegetables that I want to. I cannot train how I want to. Gyms are closed. We can't go outside. I train in a, you need people to to train. It's not a thing you can do alone. And not being able to have that has made me feel very helpless and like I don't have any control over what's happening. And, for myself, that's what I sought after in my eating disorders, is that I wanted to get a sense of control. And I can feel myself leaning back into old thought patterns, old habits in search of this control. And, for the past week, I went to the hospital 8 days ago, and I got tested for COVID-19. I still don't have the test results. So over the last 8 days, I've been resting, I've been in bed, I've been eating whatever I want to. I've just been focusing on, recovery, resting, and being happy. And now that I'm feeling better and I'm up and about, I feel softer. I feel, certain things about certain parts of my body that I'm insecure about are now brought to my attention, and I can feel that regression happening. And if I'm feeling it, I know for damn sure plenty of other people are feeling it too.
This is Let's Get Clinical by Dr. Allie. You are listening to interview clips from our interview with Mia Kang. Let's review what we've heard. Mia was hospitalized with a suspected case of COVID-19 after collapsing in Thailand from respiratory symptoms. Although she never received her test results back due to the laboratories being inundated, after the administration of both antibacterial and antiviral medications and a few days in the hospital, Mia returned home to continue to heal and has been in quarantine since. She was beginning to recover at the time we spoke to her, and now with her energy back, she notes that the confines of the quarantine and the inability to engage in her coping mechanisms as usual, a main one being Muay Thai, has made her feel more vulnerable to her pre-existing eating disorder. Two things stand out to me from a clinical perspective. One, her suspected COVID-19 case, and two, quarantine as a trigger for her pre-existing mental health condition. First, what about Mia's suspected case of COVID-19 disease? Mia, like many others around the world, had symptoms that are consistent with COVID-19 disease. COVID-19 stands for Coronavirus Disease 2019 and refers to the pneumonia that develops from being infected with the novel coronavirus. The novel coronavirus is known to scientists as SARS-CoV-2, which stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2. But because we know now that many can carry this virus and are asymptomatic, think about what this means. If you are an unknown carrier with no symptoms and you are walking around with it as usual, perhaps day one, you hug or shake the hands of 5 people, and let's presume that each touches their face, and each of those 5 people also that same day hug or shake hands with 5 others. That's already you plus 5 people times 5. So that's 25 people in one day who could be exposed from one infection, and that's assuming the contact with 5 people. Day 2, if we use those same numbers, 125 more people could be affected. Can you imagine at day 10? You get the picture. The point here is that if you don't have symptoms, you could be a carrier and infect others, so you need to stay at home. But if you have symptoms, as Mia did, you should consult your doctor and follow their advice. Although Mia never received her test results, she did the right thing by presuming that she had COVID-19. If you have mild symptoms, you should presume that it could be the virus and stay at home. Second, how could quarantine affect your pre-existing mental health condition? In Mia's case, she notes that as she started to feel better physically, her eating disorder started to interfere with her thoughts. Because her usual coping mechanism of Muay Thai requires physical contact, and it's not possible at this time to do that, she, like many others, is getting triggered and needs to find new ways to cope in the face of her routine being disrupted. This is a common issue right now, and I would encourage those of you who are in a similar situation to find new routines, be it yoga and exercise videos with YouTube, meditation, journaling, leaning on close friends and family through virtual dinners, teas, gatherings by video. And if you are still struggling, please contact a behavioral health provider for help. We thank Mia for sharing her perspective, not only from how COVID-19 has potentially affected her, but also how during this time, mental health conditions can be exacerbated in the face of new routines and uncertainty that we all face. Thank you for listening to this interview with Mia Kang. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe to Coping with COVID-19 by Dr. Allie wherever you listen to your podcasts. As always, if you are in crisis or you think you may have an emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. If you're having suicidal thoughts, call 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255 to talk to a skilled, trained counselor at a crisis center in your area at any time. If you are located outside of the United States, call your local emergency line immediately. What you have heard on coping with COVID-19 does not represent what would take place during a psychiatric assessment or an actual therapy session.